From Cairo's diplomatic push to end the war in Gaza to the growing evidence of Israel's systematic destruction of the Strip, today's coverage exposes a region balancing between escalation and diplomacy. Egypt has reinforced its leadership role in opposing forced displacement of Palestinians as French President Emmanuel Macron joins Cairo in rejecting Israeli attempts to redraw Gaza's future. Meanwhile, in the occupied Strip, Israeli forces now control more than half of Gaza's land. With buffer zones expanding, cities turned into rubble, and displacement reaching record levels. Can the region survive Israel's military ambitions? I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. Let's get in focus. As diplomatic efforts intensify, Cairo is once again at the heart of the region's political gravity. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi hosted French President Emmanuel Macron in a crucial visit focused on Gaza, regional security, and bilateral ties. Their joint message was very clear: any talk of Palestinian displacement is unacceptable. According to Al-Ahram Online, both Presidents Sisi and Macron issued a unified rejection of any Israeli-driven attempts to displace the Palestinians from Gaza or the West Bank. Speaking from Al-Ittihadiyya Palace, Macron also voiced support for Egypt-led Gaza reconstruction plan backed by the Arab League, emphasizing the need for immediate ceasefire and humanitarian relief. President Sisi underscored that lasting peace in the region remains impossible without resolving the Palestinian cause. The leaders also discussed regional hotspots like Syria and Lebanon. Macron's support for Egypt's strategic role and a €4 billion EU aid package highlights Cairo's pivotal influence amid growing regional turmoil. And to discuss Cairo's pivotal diplomatic engagement and its role in reshaping regional dynamics, we're joined by Professor Gil-Emmanuel Jacquet, geopolitical analyst and vice president of the Geneva International Peace Research Institute. Professor Jacquet, welcome to Qnews, and let's start by asking you, now Egypt and France both strongly oppose any displacement of the Palestinians. How do you interpret this as a message to Israel and its Western backers?
Good evening. Thanks for your invitation. Yes, well, the position of Egypt and France is consistent, first of all, with international law. Palestinians, especially in Gaza, they live in their own land, their ancestral land, so they have nowhere else to go. And to be a violation of international law, and in a way a repetition of what the Palestinians already faced at the time of the Nakba. So we can at least be happy that France and Egypt have a consistent position when it comes to the rejection of Trump's proposal to displace Palestinians. But the main question is with regard to all the destructions we have in Gaza and the fact that the US and Israel are those really in power, in charge of these things there on the ground, who can really decide what will happen to Palestinians.
So President Macron expressed full support for the Egyptian-led Arab Gaza reconstruction plan. Now, do you see this as a credible alternative to the Israeli-imposed solutions?
Once again, it's the question about who's really having power on the ground. It's mainly Israel and the US. Should it be, by the way, the previous Biden administration or the current Trump administration? Egypt has power and influence comes to halt stop military operations. It's really between the hands of Washington and Tel Aviv. The question is, how could France, Egypt, and their partners find a proper way to stop Israel from pursuing these, let's say, operations, and as we saw, that amount to what is in fact war crimes. So the more we are waiting as well, the less will be a viable solution for Palestinians and nothing much will remain of Gaza. So once again, the position of France, Egypt is totally relevant, but do they have enough gravitas to impose their views to the US and Israel? That's a question, and maybe it could be possible with big powers like China, Russia as well, because Russia was played an instrumental role with regard to the peace process. It's a member of the quartet, and China's power, Russia's power, and Saudi Arabia as well could play an important role in that. In fact, the more regional and global powers in favor of peace can throw their weight into the balance, the more chances we have, well, to see at least, if not peace, but a ceasefire and decent conditions for Palestinians.
So how does this visit reinforce Egypt's role as the primary regional mediator, particularly in the case of the Palestinian cause?
Well, Egypt played since a long time as well a crucial role with regard to the peace process in the Middle East since the end of the 70s. It consistently as well supported the regional powers, and Egypt as well as its own, let's say, views, its own approach, and it's totally consistent with the situation because Egypt as well is the closest neighbor to Palestine on one side, on the other side it's Jordan. I think that this visit of Emmanuel Macron, unfortunately, will not bring any real and lasting relief to the Palestinians consider the material and humanitarian support. But when it comes to the ceasefire and these solutions, I don't think France will be enough. But at least Emmanuel Macron visit can support as well the position of the Egyptian government. And moreover, I'm sure it will as well strengthen the already, let's say, well-working bilateral relation we have between Cairo and Paris.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stated that there can be no peace without resolving the Palestinian cause. Now, do you believe that European powers like France are finally acknowledging that reality or not?
Well, historically, France, since the 60s, since in fact the General Charles de Gaulle, tried to have a balanced approach in the Middle East. It's what some people called the Arab policy or the Arab foreign policy of Paris. However, since Nicolas Sarkozy, François Hollande, and Emmanuel Macron as well, we see that France is having less and less influence and apparently as well is less and less considered as a credible mediator in the conflict. I mean, Arab states still enjoy good relations with France. France is still supporting various bilateral relation between Paris and Tel Aviv. France is not really opposing what Israel is doing for more than a year now. Sure, we can hear from time to time some condemnations in Paris or some politicians being more vocal and trying to find a real balance in order to put all these belligerents on the same table. No, France has definitely lost the influence it enjoyed in the last decades, like under President Chirac, for example.
So France is trying to strike a balance. It's neither fully supporting nor fully opposing what's going on in Gaza, right?
Yes, well, historically speaking, France had this balanced approach. But if we look at the last, in fact, the statements from the French government, from President Macron, but as well from the head of the parliament over a year, there was no real condemnation of Israel's policy. And when the question was raised whether Mr. Netanyahu would be arrested if he would come to France, well, most statements from governmental officials or the heads of the parliament were very ambiguous and showed, in fact, that nothing would be done against Mr. Netanyahu in this case. So that's why I guess as well in many Arab capital cities in the Middle East, we consider that France will be, in fact, less able to pressurize Israel because France is, in a way, seen as siding with Israel, or at the very least, not opposing its policy in Gaza.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and French President Emmanuel Macron also discussed Lebanon and Syria. How significant is it that these files are now being tied directly to Gaza's fate?
Well, other regional problems or conflicts were always, in a way or another, historically speaking as well, tied directly or indirectly to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, if we talk about the Syrian conflict, I don't think there are real common views between Paris and Egypt. Egypt was quite cautious and wary with regard to radical change in Syria, since in fact the beginning of the Arab Spring consistently supported the Free Syrian Army and other factions of the Syrian opposition, including, according to some researchers, including groups like Jabhat al-Nusra. And recently, after the fall of the government of President Assad and the takeover of Mr. al-Shara, what we saw is rather a very, let's say, benevolent attitude from France towards the new Damascus. There were even proposals to invite Mr. Shara in Brussels or in Paris, and I don't think this view is shared in Cairo. When it comes to Lebanon, Cairo and Paris may share as well common concerns, but I'm not sure they necessarily have the same views with regard to what should happen in the future for Lebanon. And moreover, with regard to Lebanese politics, the new government seems to be more aligned with Western or French interest, but France as well is still influential in Lebanon, but it's not as influential as it used to be, for example, at the time of the Lebanese civil war.
Professor Guilhem-Manuel Jacquet, please stay with us. Now we go as Cairo leads the push against forced displacement and towards a credible path to peace. The weight of regional diplomacy now rests heavily on Egypt's shoulders. While Cairo pushes for diplomacy, Gaza remains under siege, with over 50% of the Strip now under Israeli military control and entire cities leveled to the ground. What's unfolding on the ground amounts to more than just a war. It's the destruction of a homeland. As Israel deepens its military presence in Gaza, the humanitarian implications and infrastructure damage is reaching catastrophic levels. Recent reports show a pattern of deliberate erasure of civilian objects, from roads to hospitals to farmland and entire neighborhoods. According to the Time magazine, Israel now controls over 50% of the Gaza Strip following its renewed military campaign. The report exposes the systematic expansion of a military buffer zone up to 3 kilometers deep, coupled with the construction of control corridors like the Netzarim corridor, which slices Gaza into isolated sections. Israeli soldiers admit to razing homes, farmlands, and public infrastructure to create what they called kill zones, openly stating that Palestinians will have nothing to return to. These acts, echoed by human rights groups, amount to ethnic cleansing and a prelude to permanent Israeli occupation. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already stated intentions for long-term control of Gaza, raising alarms over the forced removal of civilians under the guise of security operations. And we're continuing our discussion with Professor Guilhem-Manuel Jacquet. Professor Jacquet, we now turn to the unfolding destruction inside Gaza. The Time reports that Israel now controls over 50% of Gaza. Is this still about defeating the resistance or about permanently reshaping and occupying Gaza?
it's these military operations in order to eradicate Hamas. However, we can already raise the question that is it possible to have a military victory against such type of organization? Because this organization is in Gaza for more than a decade, for several decades. It enjoys as well popular support, especially after each combat operations of this type. So Gaza was not, Hamas was not defeated in the past. I'm not sure it will be defeated with such means, and especially with what the people of Gaza went through. Now, if we go beyond as well, let's say the official statements we have about these military operations, we can see a pattern. And it's, first of all, let's say a pattern of ethnic cleansing. We have systematic destruction, not just designed to destroy the military potential of Hamas. And even though Israel pretends that, well, it's densely populated, we have different proofs. And there were many examples of civilians being consciously or overtly killed while being identified as civilians. Recently, we had the case of these 15 paramedical workers who were killed, but we had previous cases as well with other paramedical workers, humanitarian workers, reporters. So there is a pattern as well.
Babies.
Yes, exactly. Children, hospitals. Yes, and we often hear claims that these hospitals were used as military headquarters by the Hamas, but all these claims have been debunked. So what some as well scholars showed in the scholars from UK, and there is a European network, through their research on the destructions, they show that there is a pattern, and it's not following the usual, let's say, patterns we could have with regard to military targets, to purely military targets. There is a systematic pattern, and the way it's designed is to make life unbearable for civilians and to push them. Most reasons are there, but some already left, and it's understandable given the situation there. And if all reasons leave, it will be ethnic cleansing. And in the end, it's more or less what had been already carried out during the 1948 war, and it as well in the subsequent wars or occupations, trying to kick people out.
Well, Israeli soldiers admitted to destroying infrastructure to prevent the Palestinians from returning. How would you legally characterize such actions, and how do you interpret such statements?
When we talk about ethnic cleansing, it's, legally speaking, war crimes. We're talking about war crimes. Now, if you look at a more systematic pattern, the number of people being killed, the way it's conducted, and if you look at previous examples from the past as well, in the previous conflicts in Gaza or in Palestine as well, people would talk about a genocide. Should it be fully or not conducted? I mean, should the whole population disappear or not? It could be already considered as a genocide. Many scholars and NGOs as well made claims in this perspective. And there was as well, several NGOs as well sent legal communications to the International Criminal Court as well in this sense. So we're not, playing with words, because these words have meanings, a heavy meaning. But what is happening in Palestine, once again, it's very similar to genocidal practices or patterns we have observed in other conflicts or other regions of the world. And the way it's conducted as well, the types of buildings being destroyed. And the videos we can see from Israeli soldiers themselves, it's not just about, once again, carrying a classical anti-terrorist or anti-insurgency operations. We see that there is a pattern to eradicate a culture, to make life, let's say, unbearable there, to put people out. And once again, it can be considered as war crimes, and even to the extent of a genocide.
The Netzarim corridor and buffer zones are fragmenting Gaza. Do you see this as a de facto annexation in progress?
It could be. Already after the 7th of October, we heard, not just rumors, in fact, but we saw in the Israeli media or in Israeli social networks, people advertising for the future Gaza, where you would have like real estate projects. There were as well bills passed in the Senate. There were as well Israeli politicians making comments or proposals in this sense. And if you look at who's in power, Mr. Netanyahu and his associates, And if you look especially at the policies followed in the past and still implemented, the policies designed by Mr. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and their positions as well, their usual positions and statements in Israeli politics, people would say it's scary. It's already there. We have like proofs or even statement of intents.
Yes, I get your point, and now we take you live to Cairo University, where the French President Emmanuel Macron has just arrived, marking a significant moment in Franco-Egyptian relations and a key highlight of his visit to the region.
Activity in the field of innovation. Egypt has always been the first in the region, in the MENA region. Egypt has always been in the forefront of different study programs, and along the past years, we have established different relations in the field of education that we are proud of. And as reiterated by His Excellency the Minister, we have 50 grades delivered by both countries and around 40 protocols signed that allows for 70 programs to be launched and around 3,000 Egyptian students that came to France to continue their studies. It is a 22% in the number of Egyptian students who are studying now in France. We encourage all the ideas that you have proposed minutes ago, which will allow us, in cooperation with Concord France, to receive more students and expand the program to support more students. This partnership witnessed a leap as 20 years ago with the French University in Egypt, and for years this project has been succeeding further and further. With President Sisi, we want to achieve even more progress, and I would like to say that I'm grateful to all the teams that worked with us and all the architects who proposed different designs, because our university today will go through a new phase of renovations. The French University in Egypt is now taking a new fantastic path, and we are certain that we can receive 7,000 Egyptian students in a new university campus with a great architecture in line with the sustainability principles. We will receive students from Egypt and the entire MENA region and Africa in the framework of this partnership. We are proud to announce that after a few months this university will be a fact, receiving students, and after 2 years and a half this campus will be completed. It is a true wealth, and I would like to extend my gratitude to all the university representatives who came here today to sign into new partnerships and agreements for the support of the French University in Egypt, which will be a bridge for a broader collaborations in the futures, which will include all the academia and the research institutions. A lot of the participating research institutions participating in these projects, I would like to send my gratitude to all the universities present here today, as well as the French University Consortium. As for the partnership signed into today, France continues to work as a confident partner, a trusted partner to Egypt, and we are present through the French schools in Egypt, also through this unified fabric of French schools in the East. We continue this line of work as many of you have received their French education through these schools. And I have stated more than once, this is the great phase for the French culture known to all Egyptians. Anyone can learn in a French governmental school, and you get to learn the same culture here from this country. And President Sisi yesterday told me that in this nation you can find a Jewish temple, churches, and mosques. It is a state that combines all religions together. And this is the international tendency. I'd like to say that we are going to continue this march as the French language in these schools will be taught so that everyone can actually have a working knowledge of the French language, which I have said to the President that we desire to be your partners on several levels and to take part with you even in the Egyptian bachelor degree. This will be an incentive to all Egyptians to learn French. We want more than the partnership we've signed into today. Even with the French University in Egypt, we are keen on rehabilitating teachers and professors. We're also keen on providing dual degrees, and partner universities who signed into this agreement today. We want to increase the number of these universities that will be able to provide dual degrees. We want to mobilize from the private sector that believes in Egyptian youth. We want to mobilize support from developers. We would like also to call upon different universities to provide joint programs to take part in this university development path. We will do the same with all the Francophone institutions. The language that we share here we find that so many people listen to the French language and like the tone of it, which is a very precious treasure. Francophone. There are 3.5 million people, Francophone person, which is a treasure that should be taken advantage of. The Senghor University and Alexandria and the other 3 universities members in the Francophone Agency will allow Egypt and France to be in the forefront of this project. In less than 25 years, these initiatives were joined by 60 million persons, which is a really fantastic figure, as your language, the administrative language in many institutions now that came with Jama, is French. It is the center for Francophone. We will work to qualify teachers to teach in French. We want the French language to be in the center of this project. This is what I wanted to point out, that I believe in this program, this research program, to open new horizons for French universities in Egypt, also looking forward to an education program and adding the French language to this project. This was the essence of my speech, but there is another question. What the future holds, and what do you expect for me? A question raised by Saleh. I will try to answer this question. And I would like to actually talk to these youth. Your future is the future of the continent and the future of all of us. The first answer that I would like to provide is that I can't find a serious advice that I can give you, because you should draw your own futures. But I am certain, I'm fully certain that our responsibility toward you is to provide all opportunities possible so that you're able to raise the question to yourself all the time, and to know that through learning the answer will never be provided except by yourselves. Because this will mean now you've gained your independence and you're able to choose your own future, of course leveraging the advice provided to you. This is our responsibility. We cannot impose a path on you, but we can provide different paths for you to choose. So now I advise you to study, to learn, so that you can innovate and create. I believe that you can choose and create your own futures. And you should not be depending on other people's innovations. You should be a center for excellence in the field of research and development, and we will continue to help you innovate to create a prosperous future through excellence, without anything being imposed or any ideas being imposed upon us. Learning, studying, innovation and discoveries to be in the forefront of human thought. I do not advise you to be consumers. There is no future for consumers of what has been innovated in China or any place else. The future lies in innovation and creativity. I advise you to travel, learn through traveling. And I would like to remind you of what Andrei Shadid has said. You should move, travel, and learn through that traveling. Do not ever forget your origins. Our generation has made a lot of mistakes. We thought that in order to succeed, we should travel and forget about our origins. There is some sort of shape of elite in the world promoting the idea that we would not succeed on our own. But the only form of success is that what you do on your own and benefit your countries and your neighboring countries. All the constants for ages is starting to move like waves, but the world that I have lived in was a world that we thought was the end of history. We thought that we got to the end of our boundaries and there was no any long run vision. So it is very important to establish international dialogue to reach for what's best. This dialogue should be centered around the places where we live, our origins, to preserve justice. Our universities have an essential role to play in this regard. I'm telling you, your university is the most is the oldest in this country. This is the oldest university in the continent. Look at Europe, look at my country, France, look at all of the European Union states. When you go to any of these states, which one is the oldest? It's not the headquarters of the prime minister or the president or so on, but it's the campus of universities that is the oldest and still standing till this day. Since the 12th and 13th centuries, we have universities standing that allowed and opened rooms for progress and prosperity. Do not ever live in a place, in a world without institutions that help you find your future. I really like universities. I love universities, and these are the oldest places that have always allowed for progress. And look at the irony of those who created globalization and social media, who talk about closing boundaries and closing borders. This is pure irony. We need to establish a world where we can think freely, where knowledge is accessible for all. Where everyone has rights and freedom to scientific research, because it is the only means to move forward and to upgrade our humanity. That's why I love universities, and I'm telling you, go to universities, create, innovate, and discover, and learn critical thinking. What scares me most is that we are getting into a world with no values, with contradicting values. As the largest democracies that led progress in the world is now contradicting. How are we meeting here today talking about artificial intelligence, green technology, and different other innovations that will change the future of health in the world? These are all products of a lot of thinking and creativity that allowed for discovery. A very important point is also the funding that will enable the free knowledge and free consciences. Everyone should be able to access knowledge freely. Building a critical sense allows for maturity, allows you to understand the world and have a critical way of thinking, to believe or not to believe, or to have an ideology and to build a relationship with the truth and facts. A world to be based on what should have been the example. The ideologies that we see today is contradicting with the freedom of knowledge. How can we build a better reality with these contradictions? I'm not convinced. If I'm not convinced of your research, and if this research does not serve my own interests, I can prevent it. This is not the world that we want to live in. Research should be free, and this is the role of universities to serve the entire humanity. And I talk to you all here, and I advise you and urge you to innovate, create, and learn. Learn that the only is to be born over and over again. This is the only authority to be respected. Learn more and more to have a free mind that would enable you to choose. Explore, doubt, and criticize. Look for the truth. This is what's going to allow you to advance and progress. Respecting the others and innovation for an open world, a world that embraces talents and ideas and thoughts, where thoughts interlab to build a better future. And for each of you, this is the future I present you with. Thank you so much for listening, and may the friendship between Egypt and France live, and may youth continue. Thank you so much for coming, everyone who attended in this evening. The future is you.
That was French President Emmanuel Macron wrapping up his visit to Cairo University by reaffirming the strength of French-Egyptian cooperation in the fields of higher education and scientific research. We take pride in our partnership with Egypt in these vital areas. Macron said, emphasizing the depth of academic ties between the two countries. He also announced France's commitment to increasing support for students across a range of educational disciplines, aiming to open up more opportunities for collaboration and exchange. Macron further stated that France will mobilize more support to provide joint Egyptian-French programs in establishing universities, highlighting education as a pillar of long-term bilateral cooperation. Looking ahead, he expressed France's desire to integrate the Francophone into joint educational projects between Egypt and France, reinforcing cultural and linguistic bonds as part of this academic partnership. He also stressed that France will continue to promote innovation in scientific research to remain at the forefront of human thinking, underscoring the role of knowledge and discovery in shaping up the future. Highlighting Egypt's progress, President Macron noted that the country now stands at the forefront of advanced nations in terms of curricular programs, a testament, he said, to Egypt's educational vision and reform efforts. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Qnews.